Senator Raoul to close.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate your patience and asking for that final call. I think it's an important action on your part to demonstrate that indeed we are debating this and in a very public manner. And we've debated it in hearings prior to today, prior to veto session, prior to the last year. And, you know, I'm going to ask for your forgiveness. Somebody said earlier I was an eloquent speaker, and I'm about to be all over the place because I wish somebody had asked a question, because I could have been responding to these remarks as this thing has gone on. But there's so much to talk about, and I thank you, Jeff, because you stole a lot of my fire. But let me talk about one of the arguments that has kind of recurred through this debate, and this is the notion of law enforcement tools, the term tools, the tool of the death penalty. Let's be frank about what that means. Being able to threaten death as a coercive tool to get a plea. Now, at one of the hearings we had, it was said we haven't had hearings, at one of the hearings that we did have with regards to capital punishment reform, State's Attorney Lyons was talking about that very tool. And it was said, as he said earlier today, that it brings about a lot of pleas and helps expedite things. Well, there was another state's attorney, and I think he was referenced not by name by an earlier speaker, who was at that hearing. That was State's Attorney Joe Burkett. And what he said was, and these are his exact words, such conduct, while it may be legal, is questionable in terms of ethical responsibility of the prosecutors. That is not happening. Is it happening or not? One county state's attorney said it's not happening. We heard from two other county state's attorneys that it is happening, which touches on a point I think that Senator Hendon brought up. You know, it depends on which county you're in. You know, one crime in Kankakee County might get the death penalty, they might not in another county. If you are a black victim to a white accused, that white accused is less likely to get the death penalty than if it's the other way around. It's arbitrary, and we ought not be arbitrary with these tools. Let me talk about some other law enforcement tools that have been used. You all know I recently had knee surgery, right? And one of the tools that they gave me to try to strengthen my muscle is an electronic stimulation machine. And since people wanted to get graphic today to try to tug at emotions to make people vote a certain way, let me get graphic, not about how I use these electronic stimulation to try to get my muscle back, but how the Chicago Police Department use electrodes on testicles to get men to confess to crimes they did not commit. A typewriter cover is meant to be used as a tool. We don't use typewriters anymore, but as a tool to cover up a typewriter, not to suffocate people in confessions to crimes that they did not commit. The worst of the worst. The worst of the worst. We've heard graphic descriptions of the worst of the worst. Well, the crime that Mr. Steidl was accused of the crime, and we have to make the distinction between the crime and the accused. The crimes that these exonerated men, these 20 exonerated men, were accused of committing were heinous crimes. That does not eliminate the reality that you got the wrong person. They were heinous crimes. Stabbing a victim multiple times. That's what they accused that man of doing, but he didn't do it. So the argument says because of the crime, the death penalty should have been imposed. He wouldn't be here with us today. An 8- and 9-year-old little girl being stabbed to death. That's pretty heinous. I think everybody in this chamber would agree with that. It's made worse if you're told that the father of one of those little girls committed the crime. That's pretty heinous. That's a heinous crime, I give you that. And he confessed to it on videotape. Oh, that's the death penalty case, you know. And we have to take ourselves back in history to what we were reading about Jerry Hobbs prior to us finding out that he didn't do it, and what we were thinking at the time. Ask yourself, try to go back with me. Ask yourself, what were you thinking? I submit to you, you probably were thinking that that man needs to be put to death. But he didn't do it. A 3-year-old little girl in Will County, my colleague here from Will County, another heinous crime. And again, you have a father having confessed on videotape, the so-called cradle-to-grave videotape, to committing the crime. A heinous crime. But he didn't do it. Now, I want everybody in the chamber to take a look up in the gallery and look into Mr. Steidl's eyes. At the end of the day, and people have said, well, Governor Quinn has extended the moratorium. Look, I love Governor Quinn, but he changes his mind every once in a while. So can somebody tell me till when? Huh? Could he not tomorrow, this afternoon, decide I want to lift the moratorium and do it? Yes. At the end of the day, if he does so, it's not us, you know, we're removed from this. So, you know, we just have to push a button here, either a red or green or yellow button. But somebody's got to strap somebody down. Somebody's got to take serum and inject it into a man and take his life. Would you have been willing to do that to that man?